My hand was shaking when the lawyer unzipped the garment bag. Inside lay a broken quartz watch. "This is what Eleanor left you." The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "She said it was her most precious love." I stared at the watch, a lump forming in my throat. 2 downtown penthouses went to Mark Dawson. The company shares and $30 million in cash went to her daughter. When it came to me, all that was left was this busted, useless watch. My daughter stood beside Mark, her tone icy. "Mom's always loved Mark the most. Money is reality. You could just hold on to her love." My blood ran cold. So, in their eyes, my life's work was only worth a few hollow words about devotion. The night of the funeral, I sat in my study until dawn. When I woke up the next day, I was back on the day Eleanor proposed to me. She was holding out that same watch, her eyes shining with a piercing light. "Jake, marry me." I raised my hand and slapped the watch to the floor. 01, standing in the lawyer's office that day. I stared at the will like a fool. It was the will of my dead wife, but it made me see the fraud and worthlessness of my own life more clearly than ever. I was dead. In that moment, my heart died. "Mr. Collins, please try to calm down." The lawyer's voice was no longer as gentle as it used to be. It now carried a hint of professional detachment and pity. I looked at him, his brow furrowed. He was obviously used to this kind of scene. After all, he was dealing with the estate of a successful man. But he would never know how helplessly I had lived, only to die from a merciless betrayal. The lawyer handed me a document, then pulled out a dusty garment bag. I'd never seen it before. It had clearly been forgotten in some corner for years. The moment he unzipped it, I could almost smell the musty scent of aging paper. Inside was a broken quartz watch. Its crystal face was covered in a spiderweb of cracks, and the passage of time had left an indelible mark on its dial. I froze. That was Eleanor's favorite. Mark Dawson's voice came from beside me. He seemed to notice the stunned look in my eyes, and his own were slightly red. "She loved seeing you wear this watch. So studious. She always said you looked like a gentle, thoughtful scholar with it on." He let out a deep sigh, as if lost in nostalgia. The whole thing felt surreal, like I was watching a scene from someone else's life. I didn't want to hear anymore. My gaze fell blankly on the will on the table, and I let out a cold laugh. Is this the only thing she left me? It was her favorite watch. "The most precious," Mark said, looking down, feigning a hint of shame. I slowly raised my head, staring straight at him, a chill creeping into my heart. This man, once my friend, was now my enemy. And that watch was the final love Eleanor had left me. "I get this piece of junk, while you two get 2 downtown penthouses, $30 million in cash, and all the company stock? I'm supposed to be grateful for this." My voice was cold, and the rage I'd been suppressing finally erupted. "Don't, Jake. You know the truth," Mark said, a hint of challenge in his tone. "Eleanor always loved you the most. You should at least know that. We're just cleaning up the mess." My chest tightened, and I could barely breathe. I had never imagined that the wife I had once loved so deeply would, for the sake of her first love, for the man she chose, completely discard my entire life's work. The penthouses, the cash, the company I had built from the ground up, all of it effortlessly became their fortune. Their lives were set, and me? I was dead. But the finality of death was nothing compared to the agony of a dead heart. Looking at the two of them, I felt as if all my life's efforts, all my emotions, had been ruthlessly trampled. It was like I had never even existed in their eyes. Every memory became a ridiculous, laughable farce. My life, it turned out, was that cheap. "Jake," my daughter, Chloe, spoke, her voice colder than I could have imagined. "This was Mom's most cherished sentiment. Isn't that what you're supposed to treasure?" A wave of dizziness washed over me. My head felt like it was about to split open. I couldn't help but stare down at the watch, and a memory, distant and surreal, flooded my mind. A young Eleanor, holding this very watch, looking at me with tender eyes, so full of hope. Back then, she had said to me, "Jake, marry me." Smack! I slammed my hand down, sending the broken watch flying. Glass fragments scattered across the floor like the shattered pieces of my heart. "You never loved me." My voice was hoarse but firm. "You just used me as a pawn, as a tool." The lawyer watched, horrified, not daring to intervene. Eleanor stood frozen, staring at me, her expression a complex mixture of shock, anger, and sorrow. The hope in her eyes instantly crumbled to ruin. Mark, however, just smirked, a flicker of triumph and contempt in his eyes. He had always seen himself as the winner in life, and I was just the fool who had lost. You have no right to say that, Jake. Eleanor finally found her voice, her response chilling. You never really knew me. A cold smile touched my lips. The weakness and silence of my past were gone for good. I stood up, shaking off the shackles of the past, and turned my back on the place that had once been my life. I walked away and never looked back. My steps grew steadier, my heart churning with a tide of fury. But beneath the anger, a cold resolve was forming. The weakness, the compromises, they were all in the past. In this new life, I would not bow to anyone, and it was all because of their betrayal. From this moment on, I would live for myself. 02, I stood at the window, looking out over the city below. The rain had stopped, and the stars in the night sky twinkled with a cool light. Street lamps cast dazzling reflections on the wet pavement. I felt nothing, just watched. In that moment, I finally understood that the man I used to be was gone forever. My phone vibrated. The name on the screen felt like a ghost from another life, Eleanor. I didn't answer right away. This whole thing, like a nightmare, was over. I knew she would call, sooner or later. Her dependence on me stemmed from her weakness and her fantasies about the past. But I was no longer the man who would sacrifice everything for her, the man she could manipulate. I answered the call. Jake, where are you? Can we talk? On the other end, Eleanor's voice was as gentle as ever, with a hint of a plea. What do you want to talk about? I asked, my tone flat. There was a pause before she said softly, I know you're probably angry right now, but you can't keep treating me like this. You know we loved each other once. I scoffed. Loved each other? Eleanor, there is no once anymore. How can you do this to me? Her voice suddenly became agitated, clearly not expecting such a firm rejection. We had so many years together. Are you just going to throw it all away? Throw it away? She was the one who had thrown me away, along with all my love and trust. Her betrayal with Mark was a deep, sharp wound, leaving me not just hurt, but completely disillusioned with humanity. What do you want me to do? Let you two live your perfect life off my life's work? I said grimly. Eleanor, I'm already dead. My heart is dead, not my body. Don't say that. Her voice trembled. You're successful now, aren't you? You become so powerful. Why can't you give me another chance? I regret it. I really do. My marriage to Mark, maybe it started from some confused feelings, but I understand now. You've always been in my heart. I was silent for a few seconds, a strange chill creeping up my spine. Her tone was no longer confident, but filled with obvious regret and helplessness. Did she really think those words would make me change my mind? No. Eleanor, I said coldly. You're wrong. I don't need your regret. She paused again, as if weighing her options, then asked, Then what do you want me to do? I have no other choice. You're the only one who can save me. Save you. I laughed, a bitter, sharp sound. It felt like a stab to the heart. I never needed to save you. You're an adult. You made your choice. Now you have to live with the consequences. You say you regret it, but what good is that now? You never understood me, and you never truly loved me. Your so-called love was, at best, dependence on my abilities and my status. The line went quiet again. Her breathing was ragged, as if she was trying to suppress a wave of emotion. I knew I had left her speechless. I have nothing more to say, Eleanor, I finally said. Your marriage to Mark was your choice. Since you were so confident in choosing him, you can enjoy your happiness now. The moment I hung up, I felt nothing. The phone in my hand was cold, as if it had severed all ties to the past. The old me might have softened at her pleas, might have even helped her. But now, I was no longer that wavering man. I took a deep breath, gazing at the glittering cityscape outside my window. The past was irrelevant. Over the next few days, Eleanor called and texted incessantly. She even sent Mark to see me. I didn't take her calls or answer her texts. And Mark's arrival just made me sick. In my life, that man had only ever played two roles, traitor and competitor. He showed up in the lobby of my office building that day, a woman who looked like an assistant trailing behind him. Jake, we need to talk, Mark said, acting as if he had every right to be there. About what? My tone was still cold. I had no intention of engaging with him. He hadn't expected me to be so direct, and hesitated for a moment before composing himself. I know you've been busy lately. I just hope we could talk about our past collaboration. Past? I sneered. If you're referring to how you and Eleanor completely destroyed my trust, then I'm not interested. Mark's expression soured. He seemed to have underestimated my resolve. Jake, you've got it wrong. Our decision back then was based on some misunderstandings, and Eleanor, don't bring Eleanor into this. I cut him off. You two live your lives and stay out of mine. He was silent for a moment, a flash of resentment in his eyes. You think you can just walk away from everything? The past. I glanced down at the files on my desk. The man from the past is dead. You two were just an interruption in my life. The man I am now has nothing to do with you. I gave him no further reaction. I stood up and turned away coldly. There was no pity in my eyes, only deep, unshakable resolve. After that day, Mark never showed his face again, and Eleanor's calls stopped completely. I knew she hadn't given up. She would probably keep trying, keep using her pathetic version of love to sway me. But she was out of chances. Her choice had made one thing crystal clear. I was no longer a man who would compromise or grow weak for the sake of emotion. And that was something she would never understand. The whole affair was finally over. 03. The office door opened quietly, and a figure appeared in my line of sight. It was Eleanor. She was dressed in a sharp business suit, a trace of fatigue on her face, but she still maintained her usual elegance and composure. She stood at the door, hesitating for a moment, as if wanting to say something but stopping herself. I didn't look up, continuing to organize the files on my desk. She stood there, waiting in silence for a while, until she finally spoke. Jake, can we talk? I lifted my head, my gaze sweeping over her coldly. Her presence annoyed me, but I had no intention of letting her off easy. Since my rebirth, Eleanor had found me multiple times under various pretexts, but her words were always laced with insincerity. She tried to sway me with memories, with our past relationship, but nothing she did stirred even a flicker of emotion within me. No need, I said, my tone crisp. I've said it many times. There's nothing left to explain. Her brow furrowed slightly, as if she was taken aback. She probably hadn't expected me to be so absolute. Jake, you can't just give up on me like this. You know, we had so many memories together. Don't you miss them at all? I don't. I answered almost instantly, my voice cool and decisive. A flicker of surprise crossed her eyes, but she quickly reverted to her gentle expression. Jake, I know I was wrong. You don't have to be so cruel. You've changed, but I'm still the same Eleanor who once loved you. You told me that no matter what happened, you would always be by my side. That was then I finally stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the bustling city. The man I am now is not the one who would bow to you. You want the old Jake, the one who listened to you, who spoiled you. I'm not him anymore. Her face paled slightly, a flash of anger and disappointment in her eyes. It was clear I had hit a nerve. Her lips moved, as if she wanted to say something, but she ultimately remained silent. Why are you here now? I asked coldly. She was quiet for a moment before finally speaking. My marriage with Mark is in trouble. We're not doing as well as you think, Jake. Mark's business is failing, and he can't offer me any support. You're the only one who can help me. I'm out of options. I glanced down at her, my expression indifferent. She seemed to have shed all her pride, her eyes filled with a plea for help and a sense of desperation. She knew she had hit a dead end, and I had once been her only lifeline. And you think I'll help you? I asked. The light in her eyes dimmed for a second, but then flickered with hope. Jake, please. You once said that even for the sake of our past love, you wouldn't watch me fall into despair. I know you still have feelings for me. If you're willing to help, I'll do anything for you. I laughed, a cold, sharp sound. Eleanor, you really know what to say. You're just using our past as a bargaining chip now. Her face grew even paler, clearly stung by my words. She had thought she could still use me to solve her problems, but I had ruthlessly exposed her charade. What do you want me to do? I asked coldly, as if watching a farce unfold. You couldn't just watch me suffer, could you? She bit her lip. Jake, isn't my sincerity what you wanted? I've swallowed all my pride. I'm willing to beg you. Can you please help me? Help you? I suddenly laughed, a chilling edge to my voice. Do you think I have any responsibility to help you? She froze, a flicker of unease in her eyes. You're mistaken, I said slowly after a pause. I never get involved in things that aren't my business, and I certainly won't pay for your mistakes. Your marriage to Mark was your choice, and it has nothing to do with me. I told you a long time ago, the past is no longer mine. Her breathing became ragged, tears welling up in her eyes as if to fight back against my cold words. But in the end, she didn't persist. She lowered her head, the light in her eyes completely extinguished. Are you really the heartless? Her voice was barely a whisper. No matter what I do, it's wrong, isn't it? You're wrong. It's not that I'm heartless, I said coldly. It's that you've backed yourself into a corner. You've always used others as pawns and never made a real choice for yourself. Now you finally understand, but regret is meaningless. Her body trembled slightly, as if she was enduring some immense pain. I didn't look at her anymore, just continued to stand by the window, feeling the breeze on my face. Eleanor's plea was undoubtedly born of deep desperation, but she had never truly understood my heart. The moment she and Mark abandoned me, she was destined to lose everything for me. She stood there for a long time before finally speaking slowly. Jake, I know you won't help me, but thank you anyway. Don't thank me, I said flatly. This was your choice. It has nothing to do with me. She nodded slightly, then turned and left. I didn't say another word, nor did I turn to watch her go. As she walked down my office, I finally let out a breath of relief. Her figure gradually disappeared down the hall, leaving behind only the broken world she and Mark had created. A few days later, Mark appeared before me again. This time, he didn't have the air of a victor. Instead, he looked anxious and exhausted. He stood at the entrance of my office, his eyes darting around nervously. Jake, we have to talk, he said in a low voice. I didn't respond, continuing to focus on my work. I said coldly, I don't want to talk to you about anything. I've already refused what you want. Mark didn't give up. He walked slowly into the office, his face pale. I know you're angry, but things aren't what you think. We're not doing well. Eleanor isn't having an easy time either. I know you hate me, hate that I'm with her, but we never meant to hurt you. Do you think you deserve my sympathy? I scoffed. I have other things to do. I don't want to waste my time dealing with you too. Your lies have nothing to do with me anymore, Mark. He froze, looking disappointed, but quickly returned to his usual demeanor. You're right. You don't need us anymore. But you can't just push us aside like this, Jake. One day, we'll find our chance again. A chance? I said dismissively. You two never understood what a chance really is. With that, I stood up and gave him a cold look. You should go too. I don't have any more time to waste on you. Mark stood there, his face turning pale. He seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he just turned and left. I sat back down in my chair, my gaze calm again. The anger of the past, the dependence of the past, no longer held any power over me. The emotions of the past had vanished with their departure, and I could only look forward toward my own future, toward the life I truly needed. Zero for the sky outside the window darkened, and the city's neon lights began to flicker on, weaving the bustling streets and towering skyscrapers into an endless nightscape. But to me, it all felt hollow. Eleanor's call came through again. I didn't rush to answer. I just placed the phone on my desk and watched the screen flash, a strange wave of irritation washing over me. Since she left my office that day, I had received calls and messages from her almost daily. She was still trying every possible way to contact me, hoping I would help her out of her predicament. This time, I didn't hang up immediately. I answered. Jake, her voice was laced with helplessness. Can you just listen to me for a minute? Go on, I said, my voice cold and devoid of emotion. I know you resent me, that you feel I betrayed you. She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. But I'm truly out of options. Mark's company went bankrupt, and the creditors are at our door. We're in a deeper mess than we've ever been. What does any of that have to do with me? I shot back, a cold smile touching my lips. You're successful now. Your business is thriving. I know you have the power to help me. Her voice suddenly choked up. You can't just stand by and do nothing, can you? And what are you offering in return? I asked, my voice sharp with disgust. She faltered, as if my question had struck a nerve. After a short pause, she said softly, I have nothing to offer, but I know I was wrong. I realized everything. I really regret it, Jake. Regret. I countered. You didn't think about me then. You didn't consider the price I would pay for your betrayal. What good is your regret to me now? She didn't answer, just a choked sob on the other end. The silence on the line felt suffocating. I knew she had nothing left to say. She was just using her weakness and desperation to plead for my help. I don't have time to talk about this with you. I cut her off again. You and Mark need to solve your own problems. I don't know either of you anything. After hanging up, I stare at my desk. My mind is calm as still water, yet filled with an indescribable emptiness. Her regret, her helplessness, it meant nothing to me now. Everything between us was beyond repair. Looking back, I realized that our supposed love had always been built on a foundation of inequality and selfishness. Eleanor and Mark's betrayal had shown me the truth about myself. The man I used to be, the one who would bow for love, weak and powerless, was gone. Now, I had shed all past emotions and started living for myself. A few days later, I received a letter from a law firm. The content was brief and to the point. Eleanor and Mark's company was officially bankrupt, and their debts were unpayable. As their former partner, Eleanor wanted to contact me again to seek my assistance. I sat in my office, looking at the letter, and felt nothing. Past emotions seemed insignificant at this moment. I could imagine Eleanor's desperate state, surely hoping I would step in once more to solve her problems. But she had forgotten that the man she once controlled and deceived was long gone. The letter didn't change my mind in the slightest. I simply put it in a drawer, feeling no pity or hesitation. She needed to face her own consequences, and I was no longer the person she could rely on. The next day, as I was finishing up work in my office, I received a call. It was Mark. "Jake, can we talk?" His voice on the other end was tinged with anxiety. I didn't answer, just said coldly, "About what?" "I know you probably don't want to see me, but we really need to sit down and talk." He sounded uneasy. "I know you're powerful now and don't need us, but I hope you can give me and Eleanor a chance." "A chance for you?" I scoffed. "You're out of chances, Mark." There was a silence on the other end, and then his tone grew somber. "Jake, I know you think Eleanor and I were wrong, but you can't just kick us out of your world like this. You know you're the only one who can solve our current crisis, and Eleanor deeply regrets her mistakes. Can't you just— Can I what?" I cut him off coldly. "There's nothing forgivable about what you and Eleanor did. You don't even have the most basic sincerity. How can you expect me to bail you out?" Mark's voice lowered. He clearly hadn't expected me to be so ruthless. "Don't you think you're being too cold-blooded? No matter what we do, it's wrong, isn't it?" "I'm not the one who's wrong," I sneered. "You are. You thought you could get everything by betraying and using people, but in the end, you'll only lose everything." He was silent for a long time before finally saying softly, "Jake, I get it. You don't want to help us. Fiend." I didn't say anything more and just hung up. A complex emotion flickered within me. The past pain made me feel no pity for them, but I also understood that this was all their own doing. No matter how much they struggled, there was no turning back. A few days later, Eleanor came to my company in person. She stood at the door of my office, as if she had made the decision to come here only after long and careful thought. She didn't look as composed as before. Her eyes were filled with a sense of helplessness and fatigue, and she seemed uneasy. "Jake, can we talk?" she asked, her voice low and clear, obviously lacking its former confidence. "What do you want to talk about?" I looked up at her, my tone icy. She didn't answer immediately. After a moment of silence, she said softly, "I know you hate me now, and maybe you'll never forgive me. But I have no other choice. Mark has completely failed. We're buried in a mountain of debt, and I have nowhere else to go." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street below. Her voice was still soft, but carried no weight with me. She, with her past pride and hypocrisy, was only now realizing that no one would bail her out forever. "You came to me to solve your problems?" I asked. She bit her lip, a flicker of struggle in her eyes. "Yes, Jake, I know you can help us, but I also know that everything that happened was my fault. I know I was wrong, but I truly have no other options." I was silent for a moment, then finally said coldly, "That has nothing to do with me. I will no longer pay for your and Mark's mistakes." A look of despair crossed her eyes, but in the end, she said nothing and turned to leave my office. In that moment, I finally let go of all the shadows of the past. 05, I stood at the window of the high-rise, looking out at the bustling city. The daytime noise had gradually faded, and as night fell, the streetlights began to glow, filling the air with a tense atmosphere. Since my last meeting with Eleanor, my life seemed to have found new rhythm. Her marriage with Mark had completely collapsed, and all I did was continue on my own path. The emotions of the past no longer troubled me, and the people who once saw me as disposable were finally beginning to realize they could no longer get any help from me. I received a call from Dave, one of the executives at my company. His voice on the other end was filled with anxiety. "Jake, our competitors are ramping up their efforts in our latest investment sector. They seem to be planning something big. You need to be careful. That guy, Mark Dawson, has probably connected with the powers behind him." I wasn't surprised to hear this. Mark making a move now meant he had found a new opportunity in his desperation. For him, the only way out of his predicament was to either try to win me over or destroy my current position. "I know," I replied coldly. "Keep an eye on their movements." After hanging up, I felt no emotional stir. This game of resentment had entered a new round, and this time I wouldn't give them another chance. The old me might have made decisions based on a momentary flash of anger, but the Jake I was now was different. I was determined to teach them a final lesson, to deliver a fatal blow to all their former arrogance. The next day, all preparations were complete. Through various channels, both inside and outside the company, I exposed the companies and projects Mark and Eleanor had collaborated on to the public. It wasn't just that their capital chain was broken. They were also involved in several serious business violations that, if investigated thoroughly, could lead to severe legal penalties. The news broke and immediately caused a sensation. The entire business world was buzzing, with many speculating whether Mark could survive this crisis. Eleanor's past relationship with me was brought up again, becoming a hot topic of discussion. At the same time, I quietly increased the pressure on their business sector through various means. It was all carefully planned, every step a demonstration of my control over the situation. I wasn't in a hurry. I chose to let their company slowly sink into despair until they had nowhere left to turn. Eleanor and Mark's joint venture was abandoned by shareholders and investors almost overnight. Its performance on the stock market was abysmal. Having lost the trust of investors, even their normal operations became incredibly difficult. Mark was forced to frequently appear before the media to explain the company's predicament, while Eleanor vanished from sight. I could imagine their current state, especially Eleanor's. She had once been so proud, and now she was cornered by her own choices. But none of this meant anything to me anymore. Her helplessness held no allure. A few days later, I received a call from Eleanor. On the other end, her voice was noticeably tired and anxious, even deeper than before. "Jake, can we talk?" Her voice carried a hint of pleading, as if she were begging me for help. I didn't respond immediately, just paused for a moment. Their failure in the business world had already brought me a sense of relief. But hearing her voice still stirred an indescribable emotion within me. "What do you want to talk about?" I finally said, my voice still cold. "I know you won't help us again," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "But I hope you can give me some time, help us resolve this crisis. Mark's company and mine, we've truly hit a dead end." "Why do you think I would help you?" I asked, my tone sharp. She was silent for a moment, as if collecting her thoughts, then said softly, "Because I know you're the only one with the power to solve all this. You're the only one who can give us hope." I laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Hope? You're all out of chances now, Eleanor." Her breathing suddenly became ragged. She clearly hadn't expected me to be so decisive. "Jake, I know you hate me, but I'm truly out of options. I have no other choice. You never really knew me," I said slowly. "Your so-called regret is just a product of your current predicament, not from the heart." Her voice dropped again. "Then what should I do, Jake? You know we have nowhere left to go." "You should bear the consequences yourselves," I said coldly. "Your and Mark's decisions were wrong from start. Now you don't even have a final chance." She didn't say anything more, just listened quietly. I could picture her expression, her eyes filled with helplessness and guilt, none of which could change anything now. After hanging up, my mind was as calm as still water, as if all my emotions had been suppressed into nothingness. This game was destined for this outcome from the moment of her and Mark's betrayal. In the following days, Mark's situation grew increasingly dire. He not only had to face the pressure of company debt, but also legal accountability. The entire business community's attention was focused on them, and their former glory looked increasingly pale and pathetic in the public eye. I watched from the sidelines, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. The man they once scorned and hurt now held their fate in his hands. Sometimes, the feeling of turning the tables is truly something to savor. 06. The night Mark Dawson's company was officially put under investigation, I was at a corporate gala. The event was held on the top floor of a five-star hotel downtown. Crystal chandeliers hung low, casting a cool light on the wine glasses. The people in my circle smiled more warmly at me than usual. I knew why. The writing had been on the wall for weeks. Mark was drowning, while my projects were landing, funding was secured, and several top-tier firms were extending partnership offers. The contrast between success and failure was stark. I was standing on the terrace with a glass of champagne, having just finished a conversation with a few investors, when I saw Eleanor. She was wearing a dark, floor-length gown, her makeup flawless, but it couldn't hide the exhaustion on her face. She was noticeably thinner, her shoulders looked frail. She was a world away from the confident, poised woman she used to be. She stood at the edge of the crowd, and no one approached her. I looked away, intending to ignore her. But she walked toward me. "Jake." Her voice was quiet but trembling. I stopped, but didn't move to meet her. I just watched her approach. "What is it?" Her fingers, clutching her handbag, were white. Her lips moved as she tried to form the words. "Can we talk? In private?" I glanced around. The room was bustling. Her just standing here was conspicuous enough. I turned and walked to a corner of the terrace. She followed. The night air was a little chilly. She stood across from me, her eyes intensely red. "Mark's being investigated," she said. "I know. The company's accounts are frozen. All our partners have pulled out." Her voice grew softer. "We can't even make payroll." I didn't respond. She stared at me, as if searching for any flicker of emotion on my face. "You saw this coming, didn't you?" "The market has rules," I said calmly. "Break them, and you face the consequences." She let out a sudden, self-deprecating laugh. "The way you talk now is completely different. People change." She was silent for a few seconds, then took a step forward. "Jake, I know you had something to do with this." I looked at her and didn't deny it. She took a deep breath. "You're getting revenge, aren't you?" "I'm doing business," I replied flatly. The light in her eyes flickered. "You're still holding on to that hate." "I am," I said, looking directly at her. "But it's directed at myself, not you." She was clearly stunned. I continued, "Back then, I knew you and Mark were still involved, but I pretended not to see. I thought if I gave you enough resources, enough status, you would come back to me." Her lips turned white. "What you gave me was never love. It was a business plan," she said, her voice suddenly rising. "You planned out everything for me. You even expected me to manage my emotions to fit your script." I gave a cold smile. "Then what did you want? Passion? Excitement? Someone to constantly bow down to you?" Her eyes reddened. "I wanted to be truly seen. And do you see clearly now?" I shot back. She froze. The wind messed up her hair, but she didn't fix it. "I used to think you would never leave," she said quietly. "No matter how reckless I was, you would always be there." I said nothing. She suddenly laughed, but tears streamed down her face. I was so wrong. I looked at her without offering any comfort. She wiped away her tears, her voice becoming hoarse. "Mark can't handle it. He's already trying to pin the blame on me." My eyebrow arched slightly. "That was predictable." "He told me that if I publicly admitted that I was the one who made a few key decisions, he could get out of it," she said through gritted teeth. "But he was the one who greenlit those projects." "He's still there. What are you going to do?" She looked up, her eyes finally free of calculation, filled only with desperation. "I came to ask you something." "What?" "If I hadn't chosen him back then, would we have ended up like this?" I paused for a moment. "No." A glimmer of hope flashed in her eyes. I continued, "Because I wouldn't have married you in the first place." She looked as if she'd been slapped, her body rigid. "What did you say?" "If I had a second chance, I would still say no." My voice was quiet but clear. "Not because of Mark. Because of you." Her breathing grew ragged. "You never loved me, did you?" she asked suddenly. The question she'd finally asked. I looked at her for a long time. "I did," I said. "But I loved an idea of you." She froze. "The real you is always calculating, always weighing the options. Even on our wedding day, You were assessing whose resources were more valuable. Her face was ashen. That's not true. It is, I cut her off. You're just used to being put on a pedestal. You stand with whoever can give you the higher platform. She took a step back, as if she'd lost her balance. So what am I to you now? Her voice was barely a whisper. A stranger. The air grew thick with silence. She suddenly smiled. A smile devoid of pride or superiority, filled only with bitterness. So I really left nothing behind. I didn't answer. She wiped away her tears and tried to stand up straight. Jake, one last question. Go on. If Mark and I get a divorce, would you? No. I cut her off instantly. Her shoulders trembled slightly. You didn't even hesitate. Because I'm certain. I looked at her. You came to me not because you love me, but because you have no other way out. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again a few seconds later, they looked completely empty. I understand. She didn't beg anymore. She didn't try to explain. She just turned and walked away. Her silhouette was frielier than ever before. I stood on the terrace, watching her move through the crowd. No one stopped her. The light caught her for a moment, then she was swallowed by the shadows. I suddenly remembered the way she looked on the day she proposed, holding that watch. Her eyes full of anticipation. Back then, she wasn't seeing me. She was seeing her future leverage. The wind blew, and I raised my glass, downing it in one go. The gala was still lively, but I knew one thing for sure. She finally realized she hadn't missed out on a man. She had missed out on a chance, a willingness from someone to give her everything. And that chance from now on would never come again. 07. The news that Mark Dawson was being formally indicted was handed to me by my assistant after a board meeting. The file was thin, but its contents were lethal. Illegal financing, fraudulent financial statements, asset diversion. To maintain his glamorous facade, he had exhausted every possible avenue. Now that the money had run out, all the problems erupted at once, and no one was left to defend him. I closed the file without comment. The people in the conference room were still discussing the next acquisition plan, but I wasn't listening anymore. It wasn't because I was wavering, but because I suddenly felt that this long, drawn-out struggle was nearing its end. At 9 o'clock that night, I walked out of the office building. Someone was standing at the entrance. Eleanor. She wore no makeup. Her hair was simply tied back, and she was in an old trench coat. The night wind was cold, but she stood perfectly straight. I stopped. What is it? She turned, her face so pale it was almost translucent. He was taken away, she said, her voice dry. This afternoon. I nodded. I know. She gave a bitter smile. You know everything. Why are you here? She was silent for a few seconds. I wanted to tell you something. I glanced at the time. Go on. She took a deep breath. He and I have signed the divorce papers. My eyebrows twitched slightly. That was fast. He wanted to push the debt onto me. She looked at me, her eyes tearless. I didn't agree. I signed the divorce papers to protect what little assets I have left. Smart. She smiled faintly. You taught me to never let yourself go down with the ship. I didn't respond. She took a step forward. Jake, I'm not here to ask for a second chance. Then get to the point. She looked at me, her throat moving. I need some capital to get by. The air instantly turned frigid. How much? 5 million. Histoire de hair. She didn't look away. I know that's not a lot for you, she said softly. I can sign a loan agreement with the highest interest rate on the market. Or I can mortgage the apartment I own to you. You still own an apartment? I asked. A small one I bought before we were married, she answered quickly. It's not worth much, but it's the last thing I have. I was silent. She continued. The creditors are already coming after me. Even though we're divorced, my signature is on some of the previous projects. If I don't pay up, I'll be held responsible too. And you think I'll lend it to you? She looked at me. I don't know, but you're the only one I can ask. I suddenly laughed. Were you this certain when you chose him back then? Her face turned white. Don't bring that up. Why not? My tone was low. When you pushed me away, did you ever think you'd have to come back and bow your head? She bit her lip, not arguing back. I thought he could give me more back then. And what was the result? The result is that I found out he can't even take care of himself. Her voice was hoarse. Let alone me. I looked at her. Her eyes were finally free of calculation, only filled with exhaustion. Are you here because I have the ability to help? Or because you regret it? She closed her eyes for a moment. Both. I didn't answer right away. The streetlights stretched her shadow long and thin, clinging to the ground like a solitary stain. "Jake," she said suddenly, "if you had hesitated even for a second at the gala that night, I might have thought there was still hope." "I didn't. I know," she said with a bitter smile. "You didn't pause for even a second." I took a step forward, because I don't want to look back anymore. Her shoulders trembled slightly. "I really have nothing left," she said in a low voice. "Friends are avoiding me, relatives aren't answering my calls, and the banks have rejected my loan applications. All the people who used to flock around me are gone. I didn't cause this." "I know." She looked up at me. "I did it to myself." She said this slowly. It didn't sound like a plea, more like an admission of guilt. I watched her for a long time. "I won't lend you the money." The light in her eyes instantly faded. I continued, "And I won't invest in any of your projects." She nodded, not begging anymore. "I understand." She turned to leave. After a couple of steps, she stopped again. "Jake." "Yes." "Are you happy now?" "Very." She nodded. "That's good." She said nothing more. The wind blew her trench coat open, but she didn't pull it shut. I stood where I was, watching her walk away step by step. I didn't follow. I didn't call out to her. The next day, I heard she had sold that small apartment for a very low price. Later, she moved out of her luxury condo and rented a place in an old building in the north end of the city. Mark's case moved quickly. The media followed up with reports. His assets were frozen, and he was banned from any high-end consumption. The once dashing man now couldn't even get a meeting with a client. A few weeks later, I saw Eleanor again at a project pitch event. She was wearing a simple business suit, sitting in a corner, holding a business plan. When it was her turn to speak, almost no one in the audience was paying attention. Her voice was quiet but clear. She was presenting a proposal for a small cultural training center. There was no grand vision, no empty promises, just cost calculations and return on investment timelines. When she finished, the applause was sparse. During the Q&A, someone asked directly, "Weren't you in capital management before? Why the sudden switch to this?" She paused for a moment. "Because now, I only do things I can control." I sat in the back row, silent. Her gaze swept across the room, but didn't linger on me. In that moment, I suddenly understood. She had finally realized that what she thought was a shortcut was just a path to the edge of a cliff. After the event, she left through a side door. She didn't come to find me again, and I didn't reach out. The city kept moving. Projects advanced, contracts were signed, and a new map of my empire was slowly being drawn. Sometimes late at night, I would remember the way she looked standing in front of my office building. It wasn't out of pity. It was just to confirm one thing. Some people are only meant to walk with you for a part of the journey. If they take the wrong path, they can never go back to where they started. 08. The day the company went public, the weather was perfect. The hall was packed with people, media, investors, partners, filling the entire floor. The company name scrolled across the big screens. I stood at the very front, my suit impeccable. When the lights hit me, even my shadow was sharp and clear. When the host announced my name, the entire room erupted in applause. I walked up to the stage and took the microphone. There was no grand speech, no emotional story. I just stated a few key figures and future plans, then turned the time over to my team. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty the new chapter of my life had begun. After the event, an investor representative clapped me on the shoulder. "Mr. Collins, to get to this point in 3 years is truly remarkable." I nodded without saying much. They saw the success. Only I knew what was behind it, starting over again and again and uprooting every last bit of hesitation and weakness. Back in my office that afternoon, my secretary handed me a letter. It was handwritten. There was no signature, but I recognized the handwriting at a glance. "Eleanor." I opened it. There weren't many words. She said her small training center was up and running. It wasn't big, but it was enough to support her. She said she was no longer involved in speculative ventures, only in projects that were grounded in reality. She also said that the choices she had made in the past were the hardest lesson of her life. The last sentence was simple. "Thank you for not looking back." I stared at those words for a long time. It wasn't that I was moved. It was a sense of final, complete closure. That evening, I went to the lakefront alone. The night was quiet, and the wind on my face felt liberating, something I hadn't felt in a long time. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. I answered. "Mr. Collins, it's me." Eleanor's voice. I didn't hang up. What is it? I'm at the lakefront, she said. I saw you. I turned my head. Not far away, she was standing under a streetlight. No glamorous dress, no perfect makeup, just a simple coat. I didn't walk toward her, but she walked toward me. She stopped about 6 feet away. Congratulations, she said. Thank you. A brief silence. She looked out at the water. Mark was sentenced to 3 years probation, she said calmly. His parents had to sell their house to cover some of the restitution. I nodded. Do you still hate him? She asked. No, I answered quickly. She turned to look at me. Do you hate me? I thought for a few seconds. No, she let out a faint smile. Then why did you never give me a chance? Because I don't love you anymore. The words came out without any emotional charge. Her breath hitched for a moment. It's that simple. Yes. She looked down, silent for a moment. I used to think you couldn't live without me. You overestimated yourself. She didn't argue. Is there someone else in your life now? She asked. Yes. She looked up, a complex emotion flickering in her eyes. Is she better than me? She doesn't compare herself to others, I said. She's just herself. She nodded. That's good. The wind blew her hair across her face, and she tucked it back. Jake, I used to think love was about being chosen. Then I realized love is about taking responsibility. She looked up at me. It's a shame I learned that too late. I didn't reply. Some lessons are learned only at the cost of what is lost. She took a step back. I won't bother you again. Okay. She smiled. This time, the smile wasn't bitter, nor was it a test. Thank you for knocking that watch out of my hand that day. I was taken aback for a second. If you had said yes, I might have gone my whole life without knowing how selfish I truly was. The sound of the waves hitting the shore was clear and steady. She turned and walked away. She didn't look back. I stood where I was, watching her silhouette disappear into the crowd. I felt no emptiness, no regret, only a profound sense of peace. When I got home, the lights were on. Someone was sitting in the living room. Evelyn Reed, my current business partner, and the woman I was about to be engaged to. She looked up at me. All done. Yes. She didn't ask for details, just handed me a glass of water. We have a meeting with the new project investors tomorrow. Don't stay up too late. I sat down next to her. Okay. She looked at me, her gaze open and direct. No proving, no comparisons. I suddenly realized what I had always truly wanted was never a whirlwind of emotions. It was a partnership. Outside, the night was calm. I leaned back on the sofa and closed my eyes. Images flashed through my mind. The shattered watch, the rejection that day, the confrontation at the gala, the cold wind outside my office. Every single moment was a reminder. Life is never about being saved by someone else. It's about deciding where you want to go. My phone vibrated. It was my secretary, confirming the next day's schedule. I replied with one word. Okay. Putting down the phone, I looked at the person beside me. The future was in front of me, not behind. This time, I didn't look back.